So it sounds like in some ways pain can be a form of awareness or teaching.
It is one of the greatest gifts that we will ever have. And if anybody heard that and there's immediate rejection, no, there's nothing good. That's where the emotional work has to start. Pain will bring you towards a deeper level of self-care than you would have gotten to without it. We tend to not change as human beings unless there's something painful enough to make us change.
All right, well, let's get started. Thanks, Vinny, for coming on the Authentic Healing Podcast. Super glad to have you here. I'll let you introduce yourself because I could, but I love your story. I love hearing the background from each guest, so I'll let you kind of introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you. Great being here, by the way. I just finished listening to one of your podcasts about basically becoming your own doctor, and it fired me up. So this is just a natural next extension part of my day. So thank you for having me on. My name is Vinny Crispino. I'm the founder of Pain Academy, and I'll give you the very brief version. Maybe we can dive a little bit deeper into this. I was a former 8-time All-American Division I collegiate athlete. I was great at swimming. I was great at endurance events. And, I had dreams of going to the Olympics when I was younger. And all of that really was changed quite rapidly when I broke my back in a surfing accident. So I went from this guy who didn't really care about movement or didn't really care about the nuances of health and fitness, because I just felt like I had been blessed with this gift and skill set of athleticism, to literally in a moment's notice, just all of that getting taken away. And I spent probably the greater part of my 20s in chronic disability, going from one thing to the next. And I think my story is probably a lot like most people's from here, which is when you're in pain, what do? You go see the experts, you get recommendations, you get second, third, fourth, fifth opinions. And for me, it was just caught in this hamster wheel of this never-ending cycle of what are the things that we got to do to take care of ourselves? And why I was so hyped up about being on your show today is this one little simple thing that you shared, and it was in one of your recent podcasts, When Shift Happens. And you talk about this moment of taking ownership and taking responsibility. Man, it took me 5 years of just in this chronic vicious cycle of doom before the light bulbs went on and I actually learned how to, I got to participate in this process. I can't just go and show up and pay people. I got to do something outside the appointments. So, my story is it's a long one, and it took a really long time to figure out what are the parts and the pieces that we've got to put together to make a comeback from a life-changing injury like this. And I put myself back through school. I learned a lot of what does work and what doesn't work. And I'm now talking to you as a 35-year-old man who's running ultra marathons, doing 50-plus mile endurance events in the mountains, going from chronically disabled to I feel limitless, man. It's been a hell of a comeback story. And I'm privileged to share everything that I've learned over the past 14 years with everybody around me.
Yeah, that's truly inspiring. What I'm most curious about is how did that switch flip from looking for someone to help fix or save, or I know they were trying to give you pain pills that led down a dark rabbit hole, but a vicious cycle. But where were you? And then what was that thought, or what was the shift for you?
Yeah, so the shift was, it was accidental. It was 5 years of me going to people, bringing my body to people and paying them to do stuff to me. And sometimes it was great. And most times it was very underwhelming, the outcome that result would bring. But I didn't know any different. I thought that that's just what you do when you're injured. And I always thought somebody else could fix this for me. And it wasn't until it was just this divine universal meeting of this guy in a grocery store who saw me struggling to grab a gallon of milk. And he said, hey, just let me help you. This looks terrible. Let me just help you. Come to my office. It's right across the street. And here I am thinking, here we go again. This is just another thing I get to add on my list of things that suck and are really expensive and don't work. And as I'm going, I give this guy a chance, and he doesn't touch me. There's no passive therapy. There's no manipulation, there's no acupuncture, there's no myofascial relief, soft tissue changes. He just asked me to lay down on the ground and put my body in this position and breathe and relax, and then do this position, and let's get a little bit more motion here. I mean, it was the entire time I'm thinking, I'm so glad I'm not paying for this. What a waste of time this is. And I stand up, 45 minutes, hour and a half, it escapes me at this point. And I stand up, again expecting underwhelming results. And for the first time in 5 years, man, I was actually able to stand, and I felt like my hip and pelvis and lower back went into extension simultaneously. And I wasn't pain-free. It wasn't like this miracle, but that edge was off. It didn't feel like every breath somebody was literally compressing nerves, sharp stabbing pain in my lower back. And in that moment was this just radical epiphany of, oh, I can do this. Wait, I can do this. Nobody did anything to me. If I just go do this at home, I get to go feel this way again and again and again and again. And it was just this transfer of knowledge, not transfer of therapy, not somebody doing something to me while I'm a passive, person in this process. It was like the first time where I was actively a part of it, and he was coaching me, and hey, this is what you're probably going to feel, and let's work through that. And this is what muscle's probably going to cramp. Let's work through that. And it was just like somebody was guiding me back into my body, and it felt better. And there was just nothing, my standard of quality, my standard of how I was approaching this problem completely and drastically elevated from that moment on. I was now no longer looking for somebody to do it for me. I was no longer looking for people to promise pain relief. I was looking for the people who could transfer skills to me, because that's what happened in that session. And I could now go use those skills in between every appointment. And I felt like I was born again. I mean, I'm 5 years into this process, and I'm now having this discovery of, oh yeah, I need to participate in my own rescue here.
Wow. Yeah, that's so crucial. I see almost every patient I have go on that journey from thinking like, who's going to save me? Who's going to fix me? And that's like stage one. Then stage two is sort of like doctoring. Docere means to teach, where it's like you're teaching them how to actually grow up and take care of themselves and give them tools. And then the third stage is sort of the person has the tools and they just have a coach or a guide or a mentor or a guru of some sort who's basically like with them along the way, who gives them little like adjustments here and there. And I think we know that in sports, like you knew that as an athlete at first, you really didn't know anything. Someone had to teach you how to swim, or like they had to hold you up while you learned how to swim. Then you eventually have coaches later on. And I guess healing is the same way. And most of us, probably because modern medicine is so good, like the pills numb pain so effectively, and different substances are so strong that it's easy to forget our own strength. So it's beautiful that someone was able to show that back to you, and it wasn't just someone trying to do something to you, but do something for you.
Yeah, and bringing this conversation even back to the podcast that I just mentioned that you were on, one of the things that I loved about it is you talked about, you kind of already know a few things that you need to do, right? There are already some answers inside of you. You might not have it all figured out, but like there's some stuff that you can probably take action on right now that can just move you towards making some really healthy shifts and changes in your life. And when I really reflect back, in those 5 dark years, as I put it, worst years of my life, the messaging, the narratives, the language assigned to pain was, you need something outside of yourself to fix this. It's a pill. It's a therapy. You need somebody to do something. Like, you can't possibly do this on your own. There's no way. You're broken and you need to be fixed. And I think having this really radical shift that the answers are within, and I know that might sound woo-woo for a lot of people, but they're there, man. You just have to go a little slower and pay attention. And it was this coming into like this second age of life where I realized I am the only one hardwired to my nervous system. I should probably listen to it.
So what happened once that intuition in you, that spark kicked on? Like, what were the next steps? What'd that look like?
This took me down a path of, okay, my lack of knowledge, my lack of skills is in biomechanical. I'm missing the physiological exercises. I'm missing the appropriate stimulus that I need to give my body every day to heal. Somebody gave me physical tools. I used those physical tools, and it created a great space to heal. But that only got me so far. It worked, and it helped take the edge off. And I went from not knowing what to do, very overwhelmed, to now I at least had a physical action plan. But I kept running into the same problem, which is like I could make myself feel better, okay, in a couple minutes. I could take the edge off. I could mitigate symptoms. But this problem really wasn't changing deeply. I wasn't really going after the source of it. And this led me to the next serious lack of skill set that I just didn't have. Emotional maturity. I had no understanding that trauma and what happened to me as a child, all of these things that I'd experienced in my life were sabotaging the physical tools from working. And I coach people all the time through my program. The tools that worked for me were the same tools that didn't work for me. What changed was my ability to parent myself and coach myself through pain. I'm talking about developing new coping mechanisms and learning how to relate to pain differently, changing my relationship with pain. I thought this problem was so purely physical, which is why I just barreled through it. I looked for the biggest and most badass, the most complicated corrective exercises. And I think we've seen them if you've ever spent 5 minutes online. People have like bands and pulleys all around their body, and they're teaching like incredibly excessively complicated cues that are over most people's head. But it's ego. It sounds right. They must know what they're doing, right? And so I went on this witch hunt for what are those radically complicated physical tools, while I was completely avoiding one of the other main underlying problems, which is I refused to believe that the way I was thinking was half of this problem. And I kept throwing exercises at my body and making a little bit of progress. But they were sabotaging me in the long haul.
So what was your old relationship with pain like?
My old relationship with pain was, it's bad, it's wrong, it's the thing that took my life away from me. I hated it. Pain to me was a reminder of all the things I couldn't do. It fortified this victim mentality of poor me. There's this thing that happened to me, this traumatic injury, this traumatic accident, and I wanted to kill the messenger, and pain was that messenger. Anytime I felt it, I only knew how to brace myself and force and fight my way through it. Anytime I felt pain, I only knew how to internally resist it. And my relationship was not one of healing. It was avoidance, suppression, escaping it, numbing it, using substances to minimize it as much as possible. I was doing everything except for allowing it to be here and learning how to work with it. So even, by this time, right, I was 5 years into my journey before I learned that I actually could do this myself. I spent the next 4 or 5 years going on a huge hunt for acquiring all the physical tools. And every time I got down to the ground to do a simple exercise and I would feel pain, I would use all of those old coping mechanisms. I would fight it. I'd clench, bite down my jaw, I'd wince my face, I'd suspend my breath, and I would just like try to power and dominate my way through it. And I just didn't know that there were other ways to deal with that internal dialogue. I didn't know that my relationship with pain itself, I had all the physical tools, but how I was interacting with it and engaging with it was the thing that was continually re-injuring my body again and again and again and again.
Yeah. So how do you know when it's appropriate to, move away from or kind of lightly not push through pain, but sort of allow for pain? Like, how do you know when to start that shift?
You won't know it until you first practice awareness, right? Because before we can get to a knowing of what to do with pain, we first have to be clear of how are we with it when we feel it. There is this really brief space, and it could be in an instant, where when you feel a sensation, there's a brief moment, and then there's a response. What are the words that are coming up? What are the emotions? What are the memories? What's the dialogue? How do you as a human being respond and react when this sensation is present in your life? We first have to understand that pain is just a sensation. There is nothing morally attached to it. It's not right, it's not wrong, nor is it good or it's bad. It's a sensation that we have brought so much emotion, so much of our story into, and marketing tells us it's terrible. You should be pain-free. This human vessel of yours that is wired with trillions of nerves and the capacity to feel pain should never feel this thing at all. It's bad for you. So take these drugs to not feel that very normal thing. Before we can even know what to do with it, we have to first get very clear on what actually happens when it's here. What happens when we show up? And how does it change us? What is our response? Where do we feel it? Is it just in the hip? What is our breath doing? Where does our mind go? We can't do anything until we can first become critically aware of what happens when we feel it. Mm-hmm. And once you become aware of it, the only thing to do is to then learn how to relax into it. Because to meet whatever shows up with more tension by cyclically playing out your story again and again and moving to a victim mentality, poor me, I've done everything and nothing's worked. I can't go play with my kids because I have this thing. I can't be intimate with my partner because I have this pain. The only thing we can do is allow it and make room for it. And then that actually can begin to loosen the relationship of it. But we have to build a framework first of how to recognize what is our reaction to pain. And in that reaction, can we actually begin to build a framework to respond differently to it?
Great. So it sounds like in some ways pain can be a form of awareness or teaching.
It is one of the greatest gifts that we will ever have. And if anybody heard that and there's immediate rejection, no, there's nothing good. That's where the emotional work has to start. Pain will bring you towards a deeper level of self-care than you would have gotten to without it. We tend to not change as human beings unless there's something painful enough to make us change. And when we can start to see that, oh yeah, I wouldn't be on this deep dive for how can I heal my body with nutrition if I wasn't experiencing the pain of a disease? How can I go learn exercises and develop a movement practice if you're not experiencing lower back pain or whatever chronic issue that you're musculoskeletal issue that you're having? There is a gift in pain. It's learning how to recognize that. And I also want to be really fair. It's really easy for me to say that being on the outside of it. I threw my back out at the start of the year, and like all of my training just went away. I immediately started reacting. This sucks. I hate this. And I realized, oh yeah, I forgot. This isn't my first rodeo. I've been here before, and I know how I can get through it.
Yeah, I think people have a hard time hearing it when they're stuck in it, but I oftentimes, from a Chinese medicine perspective, will say that pain is for change, and it's trying to teach you something. It's trying to help you either change your actions, your environment, your belief system, your structure of your life. Like, something needs to change, because if nothing changes, nothing changes. And I think one of the most beautiful things is, like, sometimes it's not even running away from all the pain or whatever the pain is teaching, right? Like the fear or the worry or the anger or the sadness or whatever emotion, embarrassment, shame, guilt could come up. Because ironically, in Chinese medicine, like the shame and the guilt run up the front and the back of the body in the conception and governing vessel meridians. And I think it's managing those that often helps strengthen the core and the spine. But I'm wondering what your take is on that. Like, when all those deeper feelings came up, how did you start to manage those?
It first started with the awareness of it, right? Because I couldn't manage what I was not aware of. Once I became very critically aware of, oh, when I'm anxious, I really feel that front left hip flexor grab on tight. When I'm angry, I notice my lower back gets so tense and tight. I started to understand that, and I know it sounds weird, but emotions aren't just here, they're everywhere. We feel them everywhere. And so it first started off by actually being in a not great relationship and recognizing, how does this person make me feel? And where do I feel that when I'm around them? What does it, where's a lack of safety being processed in my body? How do I guard myself? Why do I assume literally the position of, if I'm going to fight, like my left side rotates forward, my right side rotates back, like I'm either trying to guard and protect myself or get ready to attack? What does this fight, flight, freeze mechanism, when does it show up, and where does it show up in my body? It was the foundation of awareness then led to the very specific exercises that I teach people that help settle and downregulate and relax the body. And it's only in those moments of being idle where pain was mitigated and I was actually feeling like I had room and space to be me, did I then create the contrast to see, oh, now I know what anxiety feels like and where I feel it. Now I understand what pain is and where that is. And I didn't know what to do with that for years. I was just really being born again. And it wasn't until I had this massage therapist, of all people, I paid her to touch me and get a physical, mechanical change in my body. It wasn't until she shared the famous Ho'oponopono phrases. Hey, Vinny, repeat after me. I love you. Thank you. I'm sorry. And please forgive me. That was where there was another really big radical shift, because I was learning to say these things to myself. And I had realized that so much of the guilt and the shame and the fear and the judgment was coming from a place of me hating myself and me not thinking highly of myself, and how I was identifying as just, I should say, over-identifying as just being this guy with a broken back. And through that, I started to feel things more clearly. I started to notice where emotions would acutely show up in my body. And then I was able to learn how to meet them with a little bit more encouragement, a little bit softer, a little less judgment. And then I began to learn how to work with them. But it only comes from the foundation of awareness and the practice of observation. And that's one of the things that meditation gave me.
So you would sit and observe, be aware, observe the feeling or felt state. And then was there a process that helped you to move through it?
Yeah, the process was this constant, it was a constant, so being aware, feeling, and then learning how to note. Just being able to call that a feeling and allowing it to be a feeling without going with it and just going really cyclical down this really gnarly rabbit hole of the moment I felt judgment, I would start to just kind of pour into more and more judgment. And being able to practice anytime I would feel a feeling to just be like, oh yeah, that's anger showing up, and that's fear, and that's shame, and that's hate, and this is guilt, but not being that, observing it. And it was time and time again of putting myself in the position of being a witness and an observer of things, as opposed to feeling like I was just getting swept up in it. I had this visualization every single time that pain or an emotion showed up. And I always imagined that I was on the side of this riverbank, and it was this beautiful, I made it glorious in my head. We had the Japanese, we had the cherry blossoms. It was stunning. And in front of me were all the things I was feeling, whether it's physical sensations like pain, discomfort, aches, numbness, tingling, and then emotional sensations, all the things that we talked about. And I would practice mentally putting myself at the side of this riverbank and allowing pain to exist and float by me. I think of the emotions as being leaves on the top of that water, separate from me observing them. Oh, there they are. There they go. Here's thoughts. Here's feeling. Here's sensation. As opposed to what I had done for almost 28 years of my life, which is jump into that river and just let a tidal wave sweep me away, feeling not in control and not capable of actually getting out of that river and saving myself. And I hung on to that visualization every day, every movement, and every breath.
That's amazing. I mean, it's like this old phrase that just because the leaves are dying, in quotes, dying from the tree and falling off and, decaying doesn't mean that that's not meant to happen. It's like our emotions are feeling. Just because like there's a leaf on the river floating on by, it's like the purpose of that is to, soak in sunlight and then eventually to let go, to move on. The feelings like pass on by. And I think a lot of people identify with their state. They say like, or they become the feeling. They are, I am an angry person, or I am an anxious person, or I am depressed, rather than I'm feeling anxious or I'm feeling angry, or even like separating further back to be the more of the observer would be like saying, I guess, my body or my brain is in a state of anger right now. But I think when you become the observer, you start to say like, oh, I'm just because someone punches me in the face and I get angry doesn't mean that I have to identify as an angry person the rest of my life. It's like a normal response to pain. It's a normal response.
Yeah, and I love what you just said. And one of the things that I teach people early on in my program is to, if we're going to talk about the body, let's talk about the back pain. Let's stop using the words my, me, mine, I, because we tend to over-identify. And I know it sounds so subtle. And if you're out there with chronic disability and pain, the last thing you're thinking about is, all right, switching my back pain to the back pain. That word is not going to do anything for me. But it begins to create space in your mind that you don't own this. This is not yours. It is a thing that is being experienced, but let's actually change our verbiage to create some freaking space between the things that you're feeling and who you are as a person. And that little subtle language shift is often the starting point of building a framework to engaging with pain differently. I got a question for you. So you obviously help people, right? You help people who are in need, they're in pain, there's sickness, there's disease. I'm sure with your deep education in all of these different aspects of Western, Eastern medicine, your marriage and knowledge of the two, and the emotional states that influence the body, How do you bridge the gap when somebody comes to you and it's clear there's physiological issues, there's emotional issues, we need a full makeover here? Like, where do you even start?
I guess I dance and then I change the music. Like, I figure out where people's consciousness is. Like, where's their awareness? What song are they playing in their head? And like, I got to meet them there. If they're all about like, I hurt my back, I'm in pain, my muscles are tight, just like rub it out for me or something, or like release it, I'll do that. But like, I'll dance that dance, but while I'm doing it, I'm slowly like turning their volume down, saying like, turning up the volume of like, hey, maybe you keep saying like, I should stretch every day, or I should go to the gym, like, or I shouldn't, trust myself, or like whatever their narrative is. I'll start sort of like turning the volume down on some of their not so helpful mechanisms and start turning up some of the ones that I would think would be more healing or helpful. And I'll just sort of see if I open a little doorway of light that has an escape hatch for them. Like, are they willing to take it? Are they curious? Because I think there are oftentimes an infinite number of ways to heal any one problem. And sometimes it's not just one movement or the exact right corrective exercise for that pain. It can be, well, are they willing to do some of the breath work and feel into the anger in their low back? Are they willing to maybe deal with the magnesium deficiency? But maybe the magnesium deficiency is coming because they're also angry about their job that they hate or their boss they hate. And so they're going and eating a bunch of, processed food that's covering up the anger, and that's depleting their magnesium. Or maybe they're willing to hydrate more. Maybe they're willing to do a couple movement patterns a couple times a day. So there could be structural, biochemical, and emotional ways that you could kind of fix any one problem. So I just kind of offer them a palette of options of healing and sort of see which ones they're willing to nibble onto first.
Do you see, I'm sure you do, or I guess not do you see it, but how do you approach somebody who I'm sure there's green flags and red flags, there's little markers that you're looking for. Can I go here? Can I change the song? At what point can I turn down their volume and turn up mine? Because you've got the path laid out. You have a pretty clear pulse on that. How do you approach somebody who you very quickly determine is more committed to being sick than making a change?
I think you have to be very truthful and very loving at the same time. And I think those people are, when they're committed to their own negative story or their narrative or their pain or their whatever it might be, there's a lot of ways that one of my friends will ask a question. I usually ask questions, or I'll do some sort of loving, truthful statements. But one of them says like, well, how's that working out for you? Like, and just wait.
The most annoying but helpful question.
Right. Like, you do you, bro. How's that working out for you? But that's one.
So
funny
why are we
one.
here?
Yeah, why are we here? And another one I think is sort of like, it depends on the person. Sometimes I'll tell them like how amazing their story is or how beautiful they are and the ways that they've overcome things that they've told me. And I'll sort of reflect back to them the beauty of their own soul and then be like, but I see an even better version of you if you were to do X, Y, and Z to overcome this problem, and sort of like hold the higher, like level up, going from like Pikachu to Raichu, or like evolving, like here's this evolved state you can get to and here's the pathway, the stairway to get there. And then I occasionally get men, let's say I had this one patient who is like 31 years old, still doing tons of recreational party drugs, tons of binge drinking on the weekends, finally got a girlfriend he likes, might want to marry and settle down. So he's like starting to question his behavior, and he's eating terrible processed food, not getting enough sleep, gets his 9 hours of work done in 2 hours a day, and then comes home and just plays video games, stopped working out, he's just basically doing a lot wrong. And I'll just straight up tell people, I'm like, the good news is you're doing everything wrong, or like, and so that's great, because if you even do like 2 or 3 things differently, you're going to feel so much better. But sometimes people just have to hear like, look, you're doing a lot of things that are not ideal. And if you do it with a little laughter, you do it with like love and compassion, I think people are willing to hear it. But it's hard to do it not in a one-on-one setting, but sometimes I try to do it online with content too and say like, look, there's a lot against us in this world in terms of how to be healthy. And it's just telling people like, it's not your fault, but now it is. Once you know, now it becomes, once you have the awareness, now it's sort of your choice of when to evolve or when to stay the same.
Well said. Well said. The loving part was a thing that was missing for me for such a long time. And it wasn't until I had this massage therapist who, she was actually a client of mine first, and I helped her. And, she wanted to give her gift of how she helps heal people's soft tissue dysfunctions through massage. She wanted to give that to me. And she just had this like motherly, nurturing energy to her. And the message of the love yourself and how she delivered it, it was like, oh, I was throwing like this masculine, this like rage at it. I was not throwing empathy, and I was not throwing kindness. I did not understand how to approach pain with kindness. I only knew how to fight it. And it's not only is empathy so sorely missing within a lot of health and wellness fields, I think it's also one of the biggest things missing within our own bodies too. And you just hearing you speak from the heart, it brings me right back to those really big shifts and changes in my life where I practice empathy and kindness towards my own self. I was in no short supply when other people were going through a problem, but whenever I ran into an issue, I was really hard on myself, and I treated pain the same way. And instead of, trying to dominate it and power my way through, man, I remember that first day that I felt pain and I met it with a thank you. Like, just like that woman's energy had on me. Like, thank you, body, for doing everything in your power. Thank you for not being in a wheelchair right now. I know you can't stand up for more than a few minutes, but my God, thanks for just like the things you can do and how you've been able to survive me abusing you so poorly, or treating you so poorly, and the substance abuse for so many years. Like, thanks for not giving up on me. And that empathy was such a huge missing component. And I find what's hard for me is, at what point does that need to be delivered to somebody? Because you've got these people that come to me who are at the tail end of many things not working. And me being an online guy, and I'm kind of one of the last things that they decide to try. It's kind of like a Hail Mary. Why not? I've done everything else. Let's see if this guy has anything he can show me. And for me, it's always hard to figure out, at what point do we have the emotions conversation? At what point, when you've come to hate your body, can I then tell you, oh, let's look at your relationship with it, and start there? Because I think people come to me, hey, Vin, what's the number one exercise to fix back pain? What's the number one thing to fix herniations or scoliosis? And they just want that physical mechanism. And I'm like, well, how do you feel as a person? How safe do you feel on a daily basis? Are we trying to just solve the symptom of you having no ability to regulate yourself on a daily basis? There isn't a damn exercise in the world that I'm going to give you that's going to solve that at its core. I could maybe like patch you up a little bit, but let's make no mistake about it. What is the real problem we're here to solve?
Right. And it's like, you could do all the vagal nerve toning exercises. You could do some extension things. You could do a lot to try to calm yourself down. But it's like, if you don't feel emotionally safe, your body's not going to relax enough to build healthy, pliable tissue. But how do you see that survival, fight or flight, stress state translate into the physical body?
I see it in this way, right? So the muscles that help our skeleton move have primarily three jobs. Number one is to contract, right? Shorten. The next one is to relax and lengthen. And the third one is to isometrically hold and stabilize. So muscles have those three jobs. And when we move smooth and fluid, It is our nervous system keeping those three jobs at various points of movement all in check. When somebody is so stressed out, when they're thrust into that sympathetic fight, flight, freeze, we lose that fluid ability to continually change through those three muscular states at any given point. It's like the muscle freezes and it forgets it can contract. It also forgets it can relax. It just stays frozen. And I see people, I don't even, and we see this all the time, like especially with the people we love and we know them. Hell, even strangers, you don't even need to ask somebody how they're doing. You can just kind of see it in the way they move. Are they moving like they can't let go and things are rigid and they're fighting their body? Or are they like floating into the room gracefully? You can see this, and it doesn't take a corrective exercise specialist. It doesn't take a body language expert to just see how we store all of how we're feeling and we express that in our body. This is body language. It's nonverbal communication. And we are giving so much nonverbal communication all day that I don't even need to ask somebody if they're in pain. And it's painful for me to see it everywhere. You see it at the people walking across the street at a stoplight. You see it in the servers who are bringing your food. I mean, it's everywhere. You can see these systems that are so dysregulated where they're just kind of like baseline always in this fight, flight, freeze mechanism. And we've forgotten how to float, and we've forgotten how to let go and move and practice being idle and resting and relaxing. It's just an overstressed system all the damn time. I see it most commonly show up with joint limitation. Just a system that's like catatonic. It just doesn't move. You can't squat. You can't bend forward. We can't rotate. The system is in this kind of perma state of stress. Therefore, it can't really go into the three mechanisms of muscular function. At least it can't do it well.
Yeah. Reminds me of a frozen shoulder type person.
Yeah. It's, I mean, I can't tell you how many times frozen shoulder cases have come to me, and it's like, okay, they're looking for a really aggressive thing. And it's like, no, we're going to lay down on the ground. You're going to put your legs over a chair, and we're going to be here for 20 minutes because I can't even get into that shoulder. Rather, I should say, I can't even help you get into that shoulder when we're trying to deal with a body that literally cannot handle any more stress. The last thing I'm going to give you is something to stress and stimulate your body. We have to destimulate things first if we're even going to have a chance at resolving this.
Totally. I mean, it makes me think like, do you ever read David Hawkins's books, like Power versus Force, any of those?
No, but it sounds like what my experience was in my 20s.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Yeah, went from, force to stepping into your own power too. It's like you became the hero of your own journey after 5+ years of pain. But he sort of gives a scale of like 0 to 200 is sort of a negative impact on like your own psyche and society, and 200 to 1,000 is a more positive impact. And below 200, just below you have anger and hate and demands. Then below it you have desire, craving, disappointment. Then you have fear, anxiety, and frightening. Then you have grief, apathy, tragedy, shame, guilt, miserable, humiliation, blame, regret, despair, all those things. And I think in a way how you were talking about just like observing them and really thanking them for being there, or thanking your body for staying alive, was, I think, one of the most genius ways to get out of the survival stress state of that lower 200, all that negativity. If you actually realize what the purpose is, like why the pain, why the survival, why the stress, if that purpose is for survival, then you can start having thankfulness and gratitude for it. And I think that's the real transmutation, is the love and gratitude for the survival state or the protection state that starts to alchemize and transmute that into something positive or beneficial that then you can start to elevate out of it. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
And that has to be practiced every day. And I think there's, of course, when we see before and afters, we see these like radical changes overnight, right? It just reinforces this destination mindset of there's survival mode and then there's non-survival, this like peaceful mode. And I think people think it's just a switch. It's a destination. It is the outcome of practicing it every single day, or as close to every single day as possible. It's not something that we just fall into randomly. We have to actively, especially in the environments that most of us are finding ourselves in, we have to practice the art of getting out of survival mode. And I do it. I teach people how to do this through physical mechanisms. Some people do it through meditation. Other people do it through psychology, like whatever it is. We have to practice it. Otherwise, our nervous system doesn't understand it at all. It goes haywire. So I love that thought as a foundation for how to frame up where we spend our time and energy and how to get out of that. And, when you're somebody like me that has had a lot of abuse happen to him, it's not going to just magically go away overnight. I'm not going to just radically shift my entire relationship with these emotions. I have to work with them as they show up, one at a time, day in and day out. And 6 months from now will be entirely different if I do that.
So how do you help people begin a daily practice of that physical connecting to themselves and the physical movements and postures? Like, how do you inspire, or how do you help people begin that journey?
Yeah, so the journey is actually quite counterintuitive, because most people are looking for exercises that work. I teach exercises that take the work out. Before we can go change this structure that has had years, if not decades, of compensatory patterns, years, if not decades, of muscular imbalances, neurological motor recruitment issues, length tension relationships, imbalances with muscles at rest and soft tissue. Before we can even resolve that, we first have to relax that and calm it down. We have to learn and practice how to down-regulate our body. So my first phase, my first step in people's journey of teaching a movement practice is actually how to take movement out. It's how to come down to the ground, put the body in really specific, not complicated. One example I've already mentioned, lying on your back with your legs over a chair, hips and knees at 90 degrees. Actually practicing being idle, putting the right side and the left side of your body in the same position of balance, and allowing the nervous system to understand, oh, why am I freaking out on the right side right now? Why am I tensing the right shoulder? I'm not doing anything. What am I bracing my abs for? Can we settle that? That's our foundation, is static, down-regulating positions. And I'll teach some subtle motions, like maybe in a down regulation position, I might ask you to move your foot or your hip. It's usually singular joint motion. I don't believe anything in the body works in isolation. However, isolating complicated things down to simple parts can be a framework for us to go approach complicated systems. So maybe we'll start with the hips or the pelvis or the spine or the shoulders. And it's so basic and simple. And because it's basic and simple, it's not overstimulating. And we get to kind of organize in our mind and our nervous system, how does this body part move? Can it move? What happens when I move it? What feelings show up? What emotions happen? It's just a shoulder. Why am I having so much resistance to just even doing a gentle motion with it, right? Let's start there. Once we can practice this down regulatory routine, and everybody's routine is different based on what your body needs, I then, like anybody who understands program design, you make something a little bit more complicated. Now let's get a couple joints to move together. Compound motions. Same thing. What happens to your body? Can we do it skillfully? Can we do it with the right and the left side of the body? Can we relax this front and back imbalances? And then I give you a little more and a little more. And I do this every single day throughout the entire year to bring you back to basics. Can we downregulate the body? Can we isolate simple joint motion? Then can we activate multiple joints and muscles and then integrate it? Now let's go work on human movement patterns. Let's get your body to understand how to make movement feel safe and fluid and simple, as it freaking should. And the entire time, I'm teaching people how to observe, but not outthink. You cannot outthink a movement problem as much as you try. Some of the hardest people that I have to help are the people with credentials similar to mine. They're so lost in the sauce that like we have to calm all that down. What should I do with this? What should I do with this joint? How does this move? Stop. Let's make it simple. Breathe and move. And when we practice this day in and day out, we start to do something really unknowingly. We start to actually create space where it feels okay to move. And in that space, whether it's a 15-minute routine for me, 30, 45, whatever we have got the time and capacity for, you then start to feel better. And you then notice what makes you feel worse. I just spent 30 minutes on the ground taking care of myself. I feel grounded. I'm in a steady state. I feel more secure, emotionally level. And oh yeah, this person comes back into my life. Oh, this came back really fast and all my progress got lost. Or this job, or this food, or this thing that I do. It then creates this polarization where you get to experience what maybe normal feels like because you've normalized suboptimal for the longest time. I've got hundreds, if not thousands of before and after photos on my account, and every one of them said and felt the same thing. One shoulder's 3 inches higher. Yeah, I feel they're both level. They're standing with 80% of their weight on one leg. Feel like I'm standing with about equal weight. Yeah, there's nothing working harder on one side for the other. We have normalized suboptimal so much, and it's by giving people these exercises that bring your body towards better homeostasis, can you then feel, oh, whoa, I'm putting way more weight on my right hip right now sitting down. Or how come I'm walking, my left leg is spending more time on the ground? Your awareness within your body starts to just naturally kind of subconsciously come online. It's freaking beautiful to watch it happen. Beautiful.
That's amazing. Do you ever get any resistance of some people who, I guess you would say like they're self-sabotaging, maybe they have some trauma that's like they don't feel deserving of it, or they have an issue with like scheduling a daily practice, or wondering what sort of, do you get many challenges or obstacles along the way for people that you help them overcome?
Yeah, so when people first reach out to me, I have a little intake form. I mean, it's just a couple questions. It's not exhaustive. But one of the questions is not only what brought you here, what are you struggling with, but how long have you struggled with it? And I cannot, I hope I'm not really making this up or being dramatic or exaggerating about this. I'd probably say 70 to 80% of the people that I help, within the first week or 2 weeks, Vinny, I'm doing your exercises and it's not working. And I'll pull up their form. They've had this problem for 30 years. Why are you sabotaging? What? You've been doing it for 2 weeks. I so badly wish that we could go unwind decades of neglect in a few weeks. God, that'd be amazing. And maybe I'm just not good enough to do that. I don't know. But I'm a firm believer of process. I don't think it's going to take 30 years to unwind 30 years of issues. I've found just roughly it's about 10% of the time. So if it takes 30 years, to develop these, we probably got about 3 years of restoration on a biomechanical level to really make deep, profound, sustainable knowledge, skills, and progress, roughly. And I see it all the time that people will do something once and it's not this like sunshine and rainbows, aromatherapy, candles, everything's all peaceful and zen. If anything, it actually might be a little bit more triggered because they just used muscles and nerves that they probably have been compensating away from. So I see people's relationship to how fast this works as one of the biggest ways of sabotaging themselves. And even from the get-go, before somebody even joins my program, I can hear and I can see the sabotage already in works. Vinny, how long until I'm better? How long until I'm out of back pain? For that person, 5 times as longer as compared to the person with the same exact issue saying, what can you teach me over the next year? What can I expect to learn from your program? What can I walk away with that you're going to help me with? What skills? Those people, they're going to get results pretty damn fast. So I first see a lot of sabotaging, you just not even giving yourself the space and room to go tackle these problems that have been decades in the making. I see that a lot. Other common things are a complete inability to set boundaries for yourself. They will prioritize other needs. They will drop everything they're doing to help their kids and their spouse, and they'll stop. They have no boundaries around work. They will work into the night. And then when it comes time for that crucial moment of the day where you have to work on yourself, they don't set those boundaries with other people. They first don't set that boundary and expectation with themselves. And it's just seeing people like a kite in a hurricane, starting, stopping, quitting, starting, stopping, spending 3 years starting and stopping, doing what probably should have taken a year's worth of work to get done because they are incapable of setting boundaries. And by the way, I'm really speaking about myself. I was the king of it. I was Mr. People Pleaser, always making sure everybody's good around me, and I would always come last on that totem pole. I was not an inconsistent man. I was a very consistent father. I showed up every single day for that boy, for my son. I showed up for my spouse at the time. I showed up at work. I never once missed a day, unless I was literally on the floor because I couldn't get up. I was Mr. Consistent. But all of a sudden, when it comes time for me, couldn't do it. I literally couldn't be consistent because I learned that my needs kind of just don't matter. I learned that as a kid, growing up in a household with 2 parents who struggled with addiction. I learned it wasn't about me. Who am I to like make time for myself? Who am I don't have time for 15 minutes a day. I got to go do everything else for other people. I see it again and again and again. Not only do people not set boundaries and expectations for themselves, they do not give their body the time and space to change. They sabotage by bringing in the expectation, well, I'm in Vinny's program, so every day should just feel better, right? I'm working on it. I've ignored my body for 20 years, but now I'm actually putting 15 to 30 minutes in a day. I should just get better incrementally every day, right? You're not understanding you're a human being. This is a roller coaster. It's a system of peaks and valleys. And over time, those peaks are going to get higher when you feel better, and they're going to last longer. And the valleys are going to be more fewer and less frequent in between. But we're all on this ride. I get professionally and personally confused when somebody's like, oh, dude, I just feel great ever since day one. It's been amazing. Like, has it? Tell me more. What are you doing that was different than what me and thousands of other people have done? Dude, teach me your ways. I don't understand. How are you just infinitely better since starting? Makes no sense to me.
Right. Yeah, the one in a million.
So there's a lot that shows up. said
I
simply.
think that's so big. And I think when you do have parents that had addiction or that where things weren't safe as a child, it's sort of the people pleasing becomes your survival. It's like the tiptoeing around. I have patients where they're tiptoeing around dad, the alcoholic, because if they're not people pleasing their dad, they're not going to be safe, whether it's like physically or verbally or whatever it might be. And so I think when you were talking, an epiphany hit me, which is that burnout from compassion fatigue is not really that we're tired of being compassionate or loving. It's more that we have like the teeter-totter, like one of your posts about holding coffee in a plate and balancing them. It's like a teeter-totter of compassion for others and compassion for ourselves. And oftentimes we're just so fatigued from giving the compassion to other people. But if we start being more compassionate to ourselves, then that burnout, that fatigue shifts.
It shifts in radical ways, and it's so simple in theory. But man, when that is like your software of always, it's not even a functional teeter-totter for people. It's just weighted all towards other people for most. And maybe I'm projecting my experience onto a lot of people, but I have to imagine I'm not the only kid that had to tiptoe around everybody. I'm not the only people pleaser out there who's trying to heal from that. And if you were to tell me in the peak of my injury, my back pain is also from me being a people pleaser, I would have flipped you off and walked away. What are you talking about? You're crazy. Yet that was the thing that made me incapable of sticking and sustaining results long term, because I would rather die on the sword and put everybody before me than say, no, this is my time every morning and it's not going to change because my future self needs me today. Incapable of that.
Totally. Yeah. Your future self needs you.
Yeah. If somebody would have given me those words in PT, in chiropractor, in in any of the things I did, maybe it would have been a much shorter healing process. Maybe it would have been a little kinder, and I wouldn't have been thrust into that depression that I experienced and the hopelessness of it. But, I gotta be honest, I wasn't paying those people for that. Not once did my PT talk about my relationship with my father having a lot to do with why I didn't do the exercises he gave me that he and I both knew would probably help. Didn't do it.
Right. Well, sometimes I think it's really the practitioners that come from a place of love that get the best results. And the methods, whatever you do repeatedly, if you repeatedly love yourself in some way, that's going to get an amazing result. Like I imagine people could take your program, steal all of the exercises you do, but use it without the compassion, without the love, without the same process, and it's going to be entirely different. It's like the same ingredients, different chef, and it's not the same like two personal trainers or two acupuncturists, two chiropractors are not all the same, even when they're doing the exact same techniques. It's really about the humanity behind the modality that's crucially important.
Yeah, and a lot of what I teach, you've probably tried it in some. There's going to be a lot of novel things, but I didn't isolate myself in a cabin in the woods and went into a deep think tank. I didn't create from scratch the things that I now teach people that ended up healing me and I've seen work for others. It's all of my education and training. It's picking the ingredients of what makes sense here, what doesn't make sense there, keeping it out of the recipe, and putting it together in a way that delivers it with care. I didn't learn about back pain from textbooks. I learned it because that was my life, and I lived through the worst of it. And I know this process well, and I'm going to hold your hand and walk you through day by day. I've had people steal my program. I've had people literally copy the code and the algorithm. And I've seen these same people struggle to get this thing off the ground because it's missing heart, and it's missing all of the things, the neglect as a child that I had to go through, the hamster wheel of the emotional aspect of this process that I refuse to believe was real. It's my story that makes the meal work. And you can just take the exercises. You can join my program and screenshot it and like do them. But is it like, what are we really trying to do here, and how deep can we go with it? It's not the exercises, it's how you navigate the exercises. And that's why I want to bring it back to what I shared earlier. I had all the physical tools. The things I teach people now are the same things that didn't work for me until they did. What changed was what I now teach people. That's the glue that holds all of these ingredients together in a meaningful way.
Awesome. Yeah, if you're making a cake, like no one wants to eat the baking powder or the baking soda. No one wants just like pure salt by itself. You got to like have the whole cake recipe working in harmony. And that's what I see in your program. And I've only seen that really in Dr. Kat King as well, who does Primal Trust. She has like some different neuro based like rewiring or autonomic nervous system support. And the main thing that's helping her community too is also just a lot of heart, a lot of love, a lot of trusting your body. And I've seen so many programs that are out there that just exist to make money or exist to sell a product and not really care about the end user or the end result or actually helping people reduce their suffering. So I'd say it's an inspiration to see your program have great success for thousands of people and really care about the deeper why. It's not just like, let's get rid of this elbow pain. Now it's in your shoulder. My job's done. Like, I did the PT for your elbow. That's fine. Not like, okay, what's the deeper connection nerve to nerve? We just moved it from the origin of a muscle to the insertion of a muscle, and we're claiming victory. It's like, no, let's look a little deeper into where this could come from. You know?
Yeah. And I created the program that I needed most, which is nothing on the surface. We have to go after the entire body. We have to take a step back. You're more than back pain. You're more than elbow and shoulder pain. That's just what's bringing you to me. Now, let's go get a full restoration. That's what has to be done. And I think we can sell ourselves short of, I don't need that. I just need a couple of shoulder exercises. And we can do that. The problem is we can do that for some time. But how long until the other shoulder goes out? Or it transfers over to the hip or the knee or the ankle? Or you just stop doing the things you love because it takes you so damn long to recover. It gets us in one way or another. And so I wanted to bring something with depth to the world.
Love it. Love it. In a world of superficiality, we all need a little more depth.
Yeah,
and I
can confidently... Yeah, please.
Oh, I was going to say, I used to actually hate doing podcasts because I just saw this like weird superficial self-promotion thing in it. And I also wanted the knowledge like as fast as possible. And what I'm realizing is not only do other people need long form content to like, they don't just need the like what to do. I was like in the doctor mode of like, oh, I have this person with this problem. What do I need to do to diagnose, treat, fix, get rid of their pain? And now I'm more realizing like the podcasts are about depth. Like it's about learning the why and the how and the heart behind things, which is why we all make the decisions. Like we all make emotional decisions and then justify them with logic later. And I was already in the mindset of like, I want to help people. I don't need the emotional logic. Just like show me what to do. But most people really need a much deeper perspective than that. And I'm loving the podcast for that reason, because I think it gets people into the understanding of how to think more than just what to think for themselves.
And I find that how you then provide it is what keeps people here in a healthy way, because now they understand it. This reclaiming your health and your body and vitality, this is not a weak process. This is something you will be doing for the rest of your life. And the more you understand that process, emotionally, we're here, we've been driven here for a reason. But now when I can conceptually justify it with logic and, oh, that guy makes a lot of sense. This is why this happens. And if I have pain here, then I do that. It's our understanding of the issue that then keeps us on the path long term. Hence the need for probably why this podcast of yours has been so valuable. It gives the why behind the what.
Right.
Or it gives the what behind the why. They already know the why of why they're here.
Yeah. So, I guess I want to ask you just a couple more things. One would be, what for you has been the most rewarding aspect of having helped so many people? I know like your own journey was amazing, but what really like fuels you and drives you to keep going at this point?
I love the thing that charges me the most is it's not the before and afters, it's not the range of motion, all that's cool. I love it when somebody says, I've never been a runner and I'm starting at 58. They're meeting a future version of them. They are meeting a version of themselves right now that they, in 57 years of their life, never once considered was a viable possibility. But by saying yes to themselves and showing up, learning how to participate in the rescue, every damn day, bringing themselves down to the ground, doing the things, their body is now becoming more capable, and they are opening themselves up to a future in which it would have never been on their radar before, having not said yes to me as their mentor. I get so much value and so much gratitude and benefit out of watching these people just be more and be different and meet areas of themselves that they never would have met if not doing for this work. It is so cool to see the spider web of life choices that really starts to take shape. And that's what it is every day. Every day you say yes, you're kind of choosing one fork in the road versus another. And that done day over day over day. What can I go do? Do I want to try rock climbing? Do I want to be more intimate or start being like whatever it is? It's parts of yourself that are now capable of, and it amps me up. And I get hyped.
Amazing. So I know we have to kind of wrap up here soon. So I wanted to ask you the kind of closing question I ask everybody, which is, if you were to, God forbid, die in the near future, what would be a message you would like to leave with humanity?
That everything that you want is on the other side of you accepting responsibility for it. Whatever you want in your life, whether it's to feel better, whether it's to run, whatever it is, the biggest thing standing in your way is you accepting that you are responsible to get that. Nobody's going to do it for you. Nobody's going to come and save you. And in that is both terrifying and hell yes, I can do it. Whatever I want, it is yours. But you have to first accept responsibility for that. And that means no longer enforcing the victim state. It means taking a step back into your own power. I happen to teach people how to do this through physical exercise, but I hope everybody experiences this in some way, shape, or form in their life. And if I could be that catalyst of change for you in your life, it's a life well lived.
Say hell yeah. That's
hell
amazing.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. Just say hell yes to yourself. You know?
Just hell yes. Hell yes.
Excellent. Thank you, Vinny. Thanks for being on the podcast. We'll put some of your info in the show notes, I'm sure. Is there any way you would like people to follow you, find you, places they can read your book or find your content?
Yeah, so social is probably the best place to start. You can follow me anywhere at Pain Academy. But, a lot of the things that I've talked about, I understand if there's skepticism. I can understand if it's not real for you. So go to my website, painacademy.net. I put together just your step one. It's like a free routine. Let me show you through some really simple exercises exactly what I'm talking about. I want you to feel what this actually does. Don't take my word for it. Listen to what your nervous system tells you. Go to my website, try a free routine, and just let's take it from there. Let's watch what happens.
Beautiful. Back to being the observer. That's what it's all about.
That's what it's about. Yeah, you got it. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thanks for being on, Vinny. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, likewise.